Imagine sitting in a company training room while everybody tells you not to judge people too quickly. The slides look harmless. Everybody nods because, honestly, who wants to defend prejudice? Then the meeting ends. The same company goes back to rejecting applicants and ranking employees, but it does not call this judgment. It calls this assessment or maybe cultural fit. For a long time, I thought judgment belonged to ordinary people. Institutions I assumed were just being professional. No, that is not quite right. They were judging through procedures. In 2018, Reuters reported that Amazon had built an experimental recruiting engine trained on resumes submitted over a 10-year period. Because the historical applicant pool for technical jobs had been dominated by men, the system learned patterns that favored male candidates. It reportedly penalized resumes containing terms such as women's, as in women's chess club. Amazon later scrapped the tool. The deeper point is that human beings had already made years of hiring decisions. Those judgments entered the training data and returned wearing the appearance of mathematics. Once the output became a score, nobody had to say, I think this kind of person belongs here. They could simply say the candidate did not pass the assessment. Judgment came back wearing a badge and carrying a spreadsheet. Then it called itself a model. I began noticing the same contradiction in ordinary life. Something about a person would feel manipulative or maybe dishonest. Immediately, another voice would appear. Do not be judgmental. Maybe I misunderstood him. Maybe the reaction said more about me than about him. And sometimes it does. Sometimes what we call intuition is old fear wearing spiritual clothing. But you still have to decide whether to trust the person or allow him closer. And the whole process becomes almost comic. Am I judging him for being judgmental? If I decide that judgmental people are bad, have I not already judged them? Or am I judging myself for judging other people? The rule stops working the moment you have to set a boundary. You still sense that something is wrong, but no longer feel allowed to say it. So you push the perception down and later blame yourself for not seeing the situation sooner. The command did not remove judgment. It made judgment less conscious. People then escape in one of two directions. One distrusts every uncomfortable feeling and stays in situations he should have left. Another says, I'm not judging anymore, I'm just following the procedure. The first becomes unable to protect himself. The second keeps judging without experiencing himself as the judge. So what would judgment look like if it were conscious? Think about meeting somebody with an excellent resume. During the interview, he says all the correct things about leadership and equality. Before it begins, though, he barely acknowledges the receptionist. Later, he interrupts a junior employee twice. Then the director enters, and suddenly he becomes patient, warm, almost gentle. None of those details proves that he is a bad person, but together they begin forming a pattern. His language says equality, while his attention keeps following status. Your conscious mind may not have named the contradiction yet, but your body has already registered it. I mean, vibe sounds vague, but think about what it actually contains. A vibe can be analysis before language has caught up. The feeling is enough to make you observe more carefully, not enough to declare that you know the person's entire character. This is close to something Confucius learned through one of his own students, Zai Yu. In the Analects, Zai Yu was once found sleeping during the day, and Confucius reacted with sharp disappointment. When unsettled him was not just the act itself, but the mismatch is created in perception. Zai Yu spoke with clarity and carried the impression of capability. Yet in that quiet moment, something did not align. The image he projected and the energy he actually carried in action began to drift apart. For Confucius, it was less a moral verdict than a felt inconsistency between voice and presence. What matters more is his reflection afterwards. He admitted that he had once taken people at their words, letting speech create a stable impression of who someone was. But after Zai Yu, that confidence in language alone weakened. He began to rely more on a different kind of reading, less what is said, more what is consistently felt in behavior over time. In his own account, this small incident shifted him toward a more vibe-based discernment, not rejecting words, but no longer letting them override the quieter signal that only appear through repeated contact with reality. Confucius judged Zai Yu, but he also judged his own method. He realized that he had depended too heavily on language. A resume tells you what somebody can present in one room. You still have to watch what he repeatedly does when status or pressure enters the situation. Sometimes judgment needs time. Words have to survive contact with conduct. Before turning a feeling into a conclusion, I need to see whether the pattern survives contact with time. Can reality correct my first impression? Am I observing the person or finishing an old story inside myself? The conclusion also needs proportion. You do not have to move from something feels wrong to this person is evil. Maybe you will not trust him with one responsibility. Maybe you just need distance. The judgment should be large enough to guide the action, but no larger than the evidence can carry. But time is not always an excuse for delay. In the temple, Jesus did not ask for another round of neutral observation before acting. He drove out those buying and selling there and overturned the table of the money changers. Whatever else that scene means, it is clearly not the modern idea that goodness must always look pleasant. The anger was not merely personal irritation, it answered to a violated order. Intensity alone proves nothing. Egoic anger narrows as it feeds on itself. Soon you stop wanting only the behavior to end, you want to crush the person carrying it. Noble anger has heat, but it still has a center. So the art of judgment needs both movements. Confucius watches whether words become conduct. Jesus shows that once a serious pattern is clear, refusing to act can also become a decision. The difficulty is knowing when observation has become cowardice. The crowd makes this even harder. Confucius said that when everyone hates someone, we should examine the matter carefully. When everyone loves someone, we should examine it carefully as well. Agreement is not evidence of falsehood, but agreement is not the end of examination either. Solomon Osh demonstrated something similar in a very simple experiment. Participants had to identify which line matched another line. The answer was visually obvious, but actors in the room deliberately gave the same wrong answer. Under that social pressure, many participants also answered incorrectly. A modern replication of the classic experiment found an error rate of about 1/3. Crowds are not always wrong, but the crowd can enter perception before we realize we are judging. Now think about an online scandal. A short clip appears. Within hours, strangers search through the person's old posts, contact the employer, and demand that every institution connected to him cut ties. Maybe the original act deserves criticism, but watch for the moment when the purpose changes. People are no longer trying to correct an action. They are waiting for the person to lose everything. More and more disorder is placed into the same body. The person no longer represents one wrongdoing. He becomes the explanation for everything. People already hate about the system. The person stops being a person and becomes the explanation. And when he is publicly destroyed, the crowd feels an enormous release. I do not know how else to describe it. It starts looking like a sacrifice. The system places its tension into one person. Once that person is destroyed, the destruction feels like purification. This is where I think we need to distinguish the person from the spirit acting through the person. By spirit, I do not mean a supernatural creature. I mean the pattern of desire and attention that has begun governing someone, what he notices and what he wants, what his intelligence now serves. Recognizing that pattern does not remove responsibility. You may still need consequences or need to stop the person, but stopping someone is different from deciding that nothing human remains in him. Hatred needs the person and the evil to become identical. Discernment can oppose what is destructive while leaving open the possibility that the person is more than the pattern currently governing him. There is a religious warning people repeat, "Judge not, that ye be not judged." People often hear this only as the threat of punishment from outside, but some something also happens inside the mind. The model you use to judge other people does not disappear after the judgment, it stays with you. Suppose you judge everyone by productivity. At first, the model points outward: who works hard, who moves quickly, who wastes time. Then you become ill, exhausted, or simply slower than before. The same model turns around and tells you that reduced output has made you less valuable. The judgment returns because the judge now lives inside you. This is why the art of judgment begins with inner formation. You need enough stillness to notice whether an old fear is speaking. You also need courage when the pattern is clear and the ability to admit when reality proves you wrong. The institution told you not to judge while its models judged you. The answer is not to install a private HR department inside your own head. It is to recover conscious discernment. Judge yourself whether you like this video or not, and whether you would subscribe to this channel. If you don't, the algorithm will judge this video based on the dopamine-seeking crowd. You still make judgments. Even refusing to do so already assumes that judgment itself is wrong. The real question is where the judgment comes from. Is it fear? Is it the crowd? Is it a model you absorbed without noticing? Or does it come from a quieter center that can see the pattern without needing to destroy the person? Because every judgment carries a spirit, and eventually the spirit you use to judge the world begins judging through you.